The storm came without mercy. By sundown the skies had darkened, and by nightfall the heavens seemed to open their jaws wide, spitting out lightning, wind, and sheets of rain thick enough to blind the eye. The quiet valley, where days usually ended with cicadas singing and the river whispering under the trees, now trembled with the fury of nature unleashed. The river had swollen so high it looked like a black snake thrashing, snapping, consuming everything in its path. Emily had been trying to get home before the storm broke its full strength. She had left town too late, her father's medicine clutched to her chest in a burlap sack, the trail already mud beneath her boots when she started across the lowlands. But she had misjudged the river. The bridge she usually crossed had been swallowed whole, torn down hours ago, the planks scattered like matchsticks. She had tried to trace the bank, tried to find another way across, but the ground was sliding beneath her. Now she stood on a half-broken ledge of mud and roots, her heart slamming in her chest as the waters snarled below her. Every crash of the current sounded like thunder against rock. She clung to the branch of a tree, its roots half exposed, mud dripping away in clumps with every gust of wind. She could feel the earth loosening under her boots. She could feel the river calling. Her breath came sharp, ragged, visible in the cold night air. She screamed, but the storm devoured her cry. Lightning cracked, and for a second the whole valley lit white. Her hair whipped around her face, rain stinging her eyes. She thought of her father, sick in bed, waiting for her return. She thought of her mother, buried long ago, and how she had once whispered to Emily never to be afraid of the dark. But tonight the dark had teeth. Just when she thought the river would win, when her muscles began to give out, another sound cut through the chaos. Not thunder. Not the roar of water. This was the pounding rhythm of hooves against mud. Heavy. Fierce. Alive. Through the storm came a rider. At first only a silhouette, framed against a curtain of lightning. A tall figure bent low over a horse that seemed carved of muscle and willpower, its nostrils flaring white steam in the cold air. The rider's coat whipped behind him, his hat pulled low, his arms steady on the reins as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. He did not hesitate. He saw danger, and he rode straight into it. The horse skidded to a halt not far from where Emily clung. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, boots sinking deep into the mud. A rope hung from his saddle, coiled tight. With practiced hands he freed it, eyes locked on Emily as if nothing else existed in the storm. Hold on. His voice carried, deep and commanding, even as thunder cracked overhead. Her lips trembled. She tried to answer but only managed a whimper. The cowboy swung the rope, the loop slicing through rain before landing near her hand. Grab it, he barked. Emily's fingers trembled as she reached for it. Her palm closed around the rough fibers, slick with water, but before she could secure her grip, the ground gave way beneath her. With a scream she slipped, mud collapsing, her body plunging into the river's hungry arms. She fought, thrashing, lungs filling with icy water. The rope slipped against her palms. Darkness crowded her vision. She thought, this is it. And then, impact. A hand seized her wrist, hot and strong against her frozen skin. She looked up through water and lightning, and there he was. The cowboy. He had tied the rope to his own body, dove straight into the raging flood without a second thought. His arm locked around her waist, pulling her against him. Hold on to me. His voice was a growl in her ear, half drowned by the river, half promise, half command. The water slammed against them both, dragging, tearing, trying to separate them. He kicked hard, every muscle straining. He slammed into hidden rocks, his coat torn, his breath ragged. But he never loosened his grip. Inch by brutal inch, he forced their bodies back toward the bank. Emily clung to him, her teeth chattering, tears mixing with rain. At one point the current pulled her free, her scream echoing, but his hand shot out, catching her again, fingers digging into her skin like iron. He pulled her back, chest to chest, refusing to surrender. At last, after what felt like hours though it was only minutes, his boots found purchase on the shallows. He dragged them both onto solid ground, collapsing with her in his arms, water pouring off them in rivers. They coughed, gasped, their chests heaving, lungs burning with fire and ice. Emily lay trembling in the mud, her hair plastered across her face, her eyes wide and wet. She looked at him, this stranger, this storm-battered cowboy. He sat beside her, hat askew, face cut with grit and exhaustion, but his eyes, those eyes burned like storm clouds, unbroken, unafraid. He still held her hand. He had never let go. She tried to pull away, weakly. He didn't release her. He leaned close, voice low and rough, a vow spoken against the howl of the storm. "I've got you," he whispered. "And I'm not letting go again." Something broke inside her. The fear. The cold. The hopelessness. For the first time that night, she let herself breathe. She let herself believe she might survive. And as the storm raged on above them, she realized that this was not the end of her story. This was the beginning. The storm had ended, but its scars remained carved deep into the valley. Where once fields were green, there was only mud and broken fences. Where once the river whispered softly, now it glared like a predator, swollen and restless, carrying away the remains of everything it had devoured. Emily woke to the crackle of fire. She found herself wrapped in a blanket on a wooden cot inside a small, rugged cabin. The last thing she remembered was the river trying to claim her, and a cowboy's arms pulling her back from death. She sat up with a start, and the door opened. Cole stepped in. His presence filled the room, broad shoulders, mud-stained coat, hat pulled low. In his arms he carried firewood. He set it down and looked at her with eyes that still held the storm. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Her lips trembled. "You saved me, again." He gave a small nod, as though saving lives was nothing unusual. But Emily's mind was fixed on the words he had spoken in the chaos of the river, "I'm not letting go again." She couldn't forget them. "What did you mean, when you said that?" she asked. Cole's jaw clenched. He looked away, the firelight flickering across his face. For a long while he said nothing. Then, finally, his voice came low, rough, and filled with old pain. "Years ago, another flood took someone from me. My sister. I held on to her hand until the river tore her away. I've lived every day since with that failure burning inside me. When I had you in my grip, I swore I'd never let go again. Not this time." Emily's throat tightened. She had never seen a man so strong look so broken. His vow was no casual promise, it was born from tragedy. The following days tested them both. The valley was ruined, roads washed out, homes shattered, bridges gone. Emily feared for her father, who lay sick at home, waiting for the medicine that the flood had stolen from her grasp. Cole refused to let her travel alone. "The land's dangerous. You'll need someone who knows the river's moods. I'm riding with you." And so they set out together. The trail was harsh. They crossed swamps where fields used to be, led their horses through forests where trees lay twisted in heaps. But through the hardship, something began to grow. Emily felt it in the way Cole watched her when she stumbled, in the way he always rode slightly ahead to shield her from danger. She heard it in the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, though it was still carved from gravel and storms. On the third day, danger struck again. The ground beneath Emily's horse crumbled, the animal sliding toward a jagged drop where the river still foamed below. She screamed as the reins slipped through her hands, but Cole was already moving. He leapt from his saddle, seized her arm, and yanked her free just as the horse plunged into the flood. She fell against his chest, gasping. "I told you," he whispered fiercely, holding her tighter than before. "I'm not letting go." This time she didn't try to pull away. When they finally reached her farmhouse, Emily's heart cracked. The house was half drowned, its walls sagging. Inside, her father lay pale and weak, his breath shallow. She rushed to him, tears streaming. "I should have gotten here sooner," she sobbed. Cole knelt beside her. "You made it. That's what matters." Together they worked through the night, finding herbs, boiling water, fighting to keep the man alive. Cole never left her side. And when Emily's father finally stirred and whispered his daughter's name, relief flooded her chest. She looked at Cole then, and something inside her shifted. He wasn't just the man who had pulled her from the river. He was the man who had carried her through the storm inside and out. Days turned to weeks. The valley began to heal, and so did Emily's heart. One evening, as the sun poured gold across the broken fields, she found Cole standing outside, leaning against the fence, watching the horizon. She walked to him, her heart pounding like the storm still lived inside her chest. "You kept your promise," she whispered. He turned, his storm-gray eyes locking on hers. "And I always will." Emily stepped closer. The silence stretched, filled with the weight of everything they had endured, fear, loss, hope, survival. Then she reached for his hand. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong, unbreakable. For the first time since the flood, she felt safe. For the first time in her life, she felt home. Glowing star, and that was how the storm ended, not in destruction, but in love found on the edge of despair. A cowboy who once lost everything had found someone he would never let slip away. And a woman who thought she was alone discovered she would never have to face the dark again. If this story touched your heart, if you felt every wave, every fear, and every spark of love, then don't let go of this channel. Subscribe now, and let us keep bringing you tales that stay with you long after the storm has passed.